queues from junction 8 at Reigate to 6 at Godstone after an accident and spillage. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GBNews' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
Very good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Friday, 31st of May. This is Britain's Newsroom with Nana Akweer and Ben Leo. Donald Trump found guilty.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
Well, in an historic moment, former President Donald Trump is found guilty on all 34 charges in his hush money case. Nigel Farage spoke to Breakfast this morning.
I think the whole thing's a disgrace. It has been from start to finish. I have been concerned about the American judicial system for many, many years. You see, it's politicised in a way that ours isn't. You know, judges get elected on a ticket saying, I'm going to get Donald Trump.
Elsewhere, Britain strikes the Houthis. The British and US forces have hit the Houthi rebel targets in Yemen for the 5th time since January. Charlie Peters has more.
5 strikes in 5 months. But are we any closer to ending the Houthi naval blockade? I'll have all the details in the next hour.
Deputy Leader Angela Rayner breaks ranks and rallies behind the veteran MP Diane Abbott, who wants to stand for Labour at the general election. The civil war within the party rumbles on.
And fly-tipping crackdown. The Conservatives pledged to dock points from the driving licences of fly tippers and fine them. Is this an issue that impacts you? Let us know.
And this incredible breakthrough at cancer care. Thousands of NHS patients will get personalised vaccines in what's been described as a landmark moment for cancer care.
Yes, and a very good morning to you and to you, Nana. I've been away for a week.
Yeah, you're looking tanned.
Thank you. What have I missed? Has
you're
anything been going on?
He's catching me up, isn't he? No, but seriously, a great breakthrough about cancer. Have you heard about this mRNA vaccine?
Yes.
Potentially.
I have well-documented concerns about mRNA vaccines.
But it's incredible that whilst, you know, I'm not sure about what their impact of COVID, but the fact that the world got together and came up with this technology could actually help cancer.
I mean, I'm all for curing cancer, of course, but I think you're a bigger mRNA fan than me.
No, I'm not necessarily a fan. I'm just somebody who is fascinated by technology that could save lives.
Elsewhere, bombshell news overnight. Donald Trump found guilty, of course, of 34 charges to do with his hush money trial. We'll be getting your reaction to that and expert reaction and analysis from all the top commentators very, very shortly. But first, here's your news headlines.
Ben, thank you. The top stories this morning. Donald Trump was found guilty last night of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal in a historic turn around from commander-in-chief to convicted criminal. No former or serving US president has ever been convicted of a crime before. Trump, who pleaded not guilty and denied all 34 counts against him, rejected the verdict and said the people would ultimately decide in November's election. Recent polls suggest a tight race against President Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have said they wouldn't vote for him if he were found guilty. US voters now face the question of re-electing an unpopular president or a convicted criminal. Speaking outside court, Trump dismissed the verdict as a disgrace.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution.
Sir Keir Starmer will outline plans to clean up Britain's energy sector today with a new public-owned company that'll cut the cost of bills. Joined by Scottish Labour leader Anwar Sawa, Sir Keir Starmer will unveil GB Energy, which will be based in Scotland with investments in wind and solar projects. Labour says it will cut costs and relieve some of the UK's reliance on fossil fuels. But the Prime Minister has dismissed it as a vanity project. Mark Logan has become the third Tory figure to defect to Labour in just over 1 month. He was elected as a Conservative MP in 2019, but he now says a Labour government will be better for his constituents and their pockets. It comes after the Conservatives lost 2 others to Labour in recent weeks, with both Dan Poulter and Natalie Elphicke crossing the floor. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana and Ben.
Very good morning to you, and it's good to be back in the hot seat, Nana.
Yes,
I've been away for a week.
Yeah, you look well, you look darker.
Thank you. Someone said I look like Donald Trump orange. It was Stephen Dixon, actually, when we just did the transfer. I said, I've been away, Stephen. He said, OK, I'll let you off.
So what was it like? Where'd you go?
I went to Greece, actually, and I wanted to take a minute just to thank all the viewers who spotted me at the airport and my family and came and said hello. And actually, it was quite a realisation that what we're doing on this channel means a lot to many people.
Well, they didn't chuck eggs at you?
No. Do you know what? People never believe me, but I've never had one horrible person come up to me in real life and, you know, be as abusive as, say, some people are on Twitter.
Well, but the same here. Everyone goes, oh, no, quit. Well, I didn't agree with you on that, but You know why? It's because I'm in person now, and I could just I look at others and say, yeah, what about it? So, yeah, and anyway, most people are just, you know, people being horrible on Twitter because they can do it on a keyboard and you can't see them.
But look, it's great to be back, and thank you for watching GB News and for your support and for your kind comments. It means a lot, and we will continue fighting for you. So I said, what have I missed? And, of course, the big one overnight, Donald Trump, he's vowed to keep fighting after he was found guilty of all counts in his New York hush money trial. Now,
he faces possible jail time over his convictions for covering up payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Did you see that programme on Channel 5? They did a whole thing. Stormy Daniels. It was really interesting. Now, basically, he paid her to buy her silence over an alleged affair. He's set to be sentenced in just over a week's time.
Yes, President Trump left the courtroom furious. Here's what he had to say. And count, by the way, how many times he says rigged.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration.
How many did you get? I got 4. Well, Paul Duddridge is the host of the Politics People podcast. He's here to give us the latest. Now, Paul Duddridge, really good to see you at this time. What time is it where you are? It must be like 3 o'clock or something.
1:37 a.m. 1:37 a.m.
God. Well, listen,
I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep after the verdict. I'm sorry, I've been tossing and turning. I had to come and talk to you. No, it's, don't worry about it. It's middle of the night, but I won't be sleeping. Put on a pot of coffee.
Good. Now, listen, Paul, was this a shock to the American people, or was this as expected?
Yeah, it wasn't a shock. When you're being prosecuted by the Manhattan District Attorney who campaigned on going after Trump, I don't think the verdict was a shock to anybody. It would have been a shock if he'd actually been exonerated, found not guilty.
And Paul, this is surely going to invigorate his base. I mean, we saw in 2016 with the comments Donald Trump was unearthed to have made about having it easy with women because of his fame. What happened then was his support just grew and grew. Are we going to see the same thing here, or do you think this will have a fatal effect, perhaps, on his White House credentials?
Listen, it's already begun. The very first snap polls have come out. And in fact, it's actually persuaded some independent voters to support Trump. And if you read Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days, there's definitely a mood where, come on, this is a bit of a sledgehammer to crack a nut kind of vibe about this whole thing. It's definitely, if there's been any effect, it's been positive for Donald Trump and his campaign. And that's according to the very first polls. I was waiting with bated breath to see what actual impact that would have. I've always, it felt like it wasn't going to make any difference. And I don't think it's going to make any difference to the ultimate result, which is still months away. November the 5th is months and months away. The dust will settle from this. I mean, look, Nana, I bug you every week. Look how we felt about the Trump mugshot in Georgia. That was the photo that broke the internet, and people can't even remember that now. This will be a stormy in a teacup, for want of a better word.
Stormy in a teacup, I like that. Listen, what about Joe Biden, though? Because Donald Trump is the first president ever to be charged in this way. But Joe Biden, despite persistent allegations that the laptop contents indicated that there was some corruption involved and everything, how come Joe Biden has seemed to escape scrutiny? Surely this is a similar kind of thing.
Because the prosecutors, and certainly the prosecutors in this case, are Democrats, frankly. This is lawfare. This is exactly what's happened. We can count the number of times that Trump said rigged, because it kind of is. It's not so much who votes, it's who counts the votes. And it's not necessarily the actions. Look, you make a very good point. Trump, this is the first time this has happened as a criminal case. This is the lowest level felony that you can actually commit in New York. I think it's called an E category. Both Hillary's campaign in 2016 and Obama in 2008 were both fined. Those were treated as misdemeanors, and both campaigns were fined for what do they call it? Campaign funding irregularities. Exactly the same that accusations are being leveled against Trump. Campaigns do get fined for misappropriation of funds or misfiling. Trump's is the first to be treated as a criminal felony as opposed to a misdemeanor. There is a feeling that this is one law for Trump and one law for everyone else.
OK, Paul, thanks very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul. Get some sleep. Get some sleep.
Not sure if you saw Megyn Kelly's comments in the US overnight. She basically said that now this so-called politicisation of the justice system, if and when Trump gets back in, the floodgates have opened, no holds barred.
Well,
will he now, potentially, if he gets back in the White House, go after his enemies in the same way he would argue the Democrats have gone after him?
I don't know, but they call it lawfare these days. I think this has opened a can of worms.
Yeah. OK, well, look, moving on. British and US forces have struck Houthi rebel targets in Yemen in the 5th combined operation since January.
The Ministry of Defence confirmed strikes took place against the Iranian-backed group yesterday. Now, all of this was part of a response to the Houthi attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea.
GB News reporter Charlie Peters joins us now in the studio. Good morning, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. What's the latest then? There was 2 sites, I believe.
You're very high up, Charlie.
OK, well, I'll lower myself for a later hit if we need to. Well, there were 13 targets hit yesterday across 2 different sites. And the main site was the port city of Hodeidah, where the Houthis have a significant command and control operation. It's the 4th largest city in Yemen, and it's a significant area for their base of operations. And from there, we know that RAF Typhoons and US FA-18s struck both long-range drone facilities there, but also some anti-air, surface-to-air missiles which were being stored in that location. That's key because this month, US forces in the Red Sea and indeed across the Arabian Peninsula have had some difficulty with their so-called Reaper drones being shot down. Now, the Houthis say they've shot down 3. Looking at the evidence they provided, I think they have almost certainly taken down 2. There's a remote chance that the 3rd Reaper drone that they've hit isn't American or has been reproduced from a former target. There are no markings on it, so that's a bit uncertain. But it's clear that there have been some losses in the sky. This is the 5th joint operation, as you said, but the US has conducted many of its own strikes in Yemen since this response to the naval blockade began. Britain's forces have to fly down from Cyprus, from RAF Akrotiri, our sort of floating and unsinkable aircraft carrier in the eastern Mediterranean. They have to be refueled on the way down there, which I think reveals sort of the limited approach that Britain can have in this operation. Meanwhile, the US do have an aircraft carrier in the Red Sea, and also their ships can launch ship-to-land strikes, whereas British destroyers and frigates don't have that capability, a bit of an issue. Now, the big question I think that many analysts are asking on the back of these strikes last night is, are we any closer to ending this naval blockade? This has been going on, as you said, for several months now, and the rate of attacks have been reduced. And we heard from Rishi Sunak his view on how he thinks that the British response is going to this crisis.
Well, what about the...
always said that we will not hesitate, and I will not hesitate, to protect British interests abroad and at home. There is an ongoing threat that the Houthis pose, 197 attacks since November. All our intelligence indicates that previous sets of strikes have been successful in degrading military capabilities of the Houthis, targeting supply, commander control, and launch sites for drones and missiles. And there is also a risk in inaction that would damage the global economy and further risk our international security.
Well, Rishi Sunak and other world leaders have said that these strikes do reduce the rate and the efficacy of the Houthi response. But it's clear that they're going to continue, because when you're dealing with targeting, especially attacks on the ground, the 3 Fs, find, fix and finish. Finding is pretty straightforward. We have extensive surveillance capabilities in the Arabian Peninsula. But fixing these targets is very difficult. They're light, they're mobile, they're agile. The Houthis can move their drones and their missile launch facilities at a moment's notice. So being able to remove all of them, even with the enormous Western firepower in the region, that's a crisis. The Houthis know it. And in effect, they have the strategic upper hand. They can keep launching those missiles into the Red Sea, blocking maritime shipping and having possibly a greater impact on the money in our pockets.
OK. Charlie Peters, thanks very much. Appreciate it. I wonder if we'll see more chants of Yemen. Yemen, do us proud. Turn those ships around.
Turn another ship around.
Pakistan-Palestine process.
Right, well, listen, up next, the civil war within the Labour Party continues. Angela Rayner breaks ranks against Keir Starmer. We'll bring you the latest. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
How does it work in your home then when you're discussing politics, especially with your young son, Nigel?
Well, I mean, we discuss politics rather than argue about it. Both of us are political professionals. We've been in the game a long time, so we understand that. So we're more keen on what is actually going on and how things are working out than clashing over opinions. Now, Claire is a Tory Brexiteer. I'm a Labour Remainer.
Do you think relationships like your own are going to become less and less common?
I think they are, and I think we can see that politics has become very divided, it's become very toxic, and we've lost that art of debating. I'm more than happy to speak to anybody on any subject to do with politics, because I think it's only healthy to listen to someone's opinion. You may not agree with it, you may think that they're ridiculous. However, I think it's really important that you hear those views, because if you only become encased in a bubble of your own opinion, you're never going to learn anything. And I think politics needs that. You need to be able to explore other sides of an argument. It also makes you better at arguing. And Nigel and I constantly disagree on various bits and pieces, but you learn how to place your argument so much better because you know what the other side are thinking. Now, if we had that across the country and across the House of Commons, we could have so much better debate and so many better different opinions coming through, and it would be a lot healthier.
And polite debate, which always strikes me about you two. You disagree on most things when it comes to politics, but you do so with so much humour and so much respect for one another.
Well, we find politics fun, and so when we bring politics into the home, we want to have fun with it too.
Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
9:49, Ben and Nana with you on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Now, Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner says she doesn't see any reason why veteran MP of the Labour Party, Diane Abbott, can't stand with the party at the next general election in July.
Now, Diane Abbott had the Labour whip restored this week after a long suspension. She accused Sir Keir Starmer of culling the party's left wing.
We're now joined by Peter Edwards, former editor of Labour List. Good morning, Peter. In the Times today, senior Labour sources said that Angela Rayner's comments were, quote, deeply unhelpful. Is there a clear rift now developing in the higher echelons of the Labour Party?
I wouldn't put it quite like that. There might be a different sort of perspective, but I'm not sure how much attention the public will pay to this. I still think the treatment of Diane Abbott is very important, but I think what will decide the election is the things that we spend most of our time talking about: NHS, inflation, immigration, cost of living, and so on and so on.
Well, do you think the Labour Party are slightly relieved that our focus is on Diane Abbott at the moment? Because obviously in this electoral campaign, we want to hear what the parties have to offer, and this feels like a distraction from policy.
No, I wouldn't use that word relieved at all. I mean, Labour had quite a big policy push on knife crime today from this week from the Shadow Home Affairs team.
Well, exactly.
And some of that was drowned out. Exactly. So I think they'd much rather talk about the policy issues. And if you think about Keir Starmer, he's such a serious person. Some critics in the media have suggested he's boring, but he's pretty sober. I think as a former prosecutor, he'd much prefer to talk about things like knife crime rather than individual candidates, even though the treatment of Diane Abbott is important because she's been a trailblazer.
Do you think there's a purge of the left wing in the Labour Party? Because, of course, you had the Brighton Kemp Town MP, Russell Moyle, who was told that he couldn't stand because he was going through a complaints procedure. Is there any truth to that accusation?
No, I don't. And we've got to keep clear in our mind two different things. One is leaders of all parties select candidates over 5 years that they're on the same page as politically. That David Cameron did that, Tony Blair, Ed Miliband, and so on and so on. But you use the word P-word, purge. I don't believe that at all. And think, although Jeremy Corbyn left the parliamentary party many years ago, his chief ally, someone like John McDonnell, continued to serve in the parliamentary Labour Party. You know, and if John McDonnell's speaking up as a Labour MP, that doesn't tell you that they're against the people who are a bit more to the left.
Do you personally think Diane... Sorry, Nana. Do you think Diane Abbott should be able to stand again as a Labour MP? And also, if she doesn't, and she stands as an independent, how is that seat going to be fought? Would she potentially, as an independent, perhaps have one over on Labour?
I don't know. I mean, it's possible, as you say, one outcome. We already know Jeremy Corbyn's got an independent campaign in Islington North, where he was the Labour MP for 40-odd years. One outcome from everything we're talking about is Diane Abbott could end up as an independent candidate. And what would happen in Hackney there, I don't know. I mean, it's too hard to call.
So why did it take so long then for the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, to tell us of Diane Abbott's fate? I mean, apparently it was sorted out in December, but yet we didn't really hear much about it. Why is this dragged on?
Well, the key thing to bear in mind, and Labour Party processes can be quite Byzantine, it's not the responsibility of the leader, it's the various committees, including the disciplinary committee of the National Executive Committee. And sorry, we might all be drowning in acronyms, but the NEC has another meeting to endorse candidates next week, and that's why it's still running. So this is not a political management issue like the leadership or a bill in Parliament or getting support for a policy. This is a Labour procedural issue, albeit with a human being at the heart of it as well.
But, Peter, aren't Angela Rayner and Keir Starmer on the National Executive Committee? I mean, in what world wouldn't they know about the decision being made by the NEC?
Well, we've got to remember that...
They are part of that body, aren't they?
They attend the meeting, and it's a much bigger group. I can't remember, it's about 15 or 20 officials from both houses of Parliament, the trade unions and so on and so on. But lots of the cases around individual MPs are resolved in subcommittees of 2 or 3, so it's not a group of 20 people in the room with the leader.
Oh, listen, Peter Edwards, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Peter.
Right, well, still to come, more reaction to the breaking news overnight about the former US President Donald Trump. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Don't forget to get in touch with us, gbnews.com/your say. We want to hear your thoughts, your comments on everything.
Lots of you exercised about that Donald Trump decision. Many of you saying that it's only going to galvanise his MAGA base, make America great again. Others saying that it's a potential death knell for his White House bid. Who knows? He seems to be Teflon, doesn't he, Donald Trump?
He does. Non-stick. It's all in his hair. Yeah. Listen, stay with us. This is GB News. Loads more still to come.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, it's time for your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Plenty of fine weather to come as we go through today and into the weekend. However, there is a system bringing some cloud and outbreaks of rain which could turn heavy across parts of eastern England today. Elsewhere, we are largely under the influence of high pressure to the west of us, which means it is going to be largely dry, bright, if not sunny. Plenty of sunshine, particularly across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and western England and Wales as we go through today. Like I said, though, cloudier across eastern England, and here there will be outbreaks of rain, and some of the showers into the afternoon could turn heavy, possibly thundery. Some blustery winds in the east, elsewhere a bit of a breeze, but where you catch any sunshine it shouldn't feel too bad. Temperatures rising into the high teens or low 20s, markedly fresher than this towards the southeast, and feeling so because of the cloud and the blustery winds. As we go overnight, we will see most of the rain clearing in the southeast, but some further spots are possible during the early hours of tomorrow morning, and staying quite cloudy in the east too. Elsewhere, some clear skies, allowing temperatures to take a bit of a dip. Rural spots in particular likely to drop into single figures, so like we've seen through some recent starts, a bit of a fresher feel first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow and in the east, still quite cloudy across parts of East Anglia, and some outbreaks of drizzly rain, though this doesn't look as heavy as the rain that we're going to see today. But elsewhere, it is going to be bright and sunny. Plenty of sunshine, not necessarily wall-to-wall blue skies throughout the whole day, but a mostly fine picture, just 1 or 2 showers to watch out for. With a bit more sunshine around and slightly lighter winds as well, it's probably going to feel a touch warmer than today for most of us. Into Sunday, and we're likely by then to start to see a weather system pushing its way in from the northwest. And that's going to bring increasing amounts of cloud across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and into northern England, and some outbreaks of rain here too. Further south, though, a largely sunny picture, markedly sunny then through today and tomorrow across the southeast, and feeling much warmer as well. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Londonderry, the A371 remains closed along Catherine Street at Nimavady because of fire services activity. On the A1 in Tyne and Wear, the southbound exit at junction 65 at Berkeley is closed for emergency repairs. The A1M in County Durham is closed each way between junctions 63 and 62 between Chester Street and Carville after an accident with queues towards there. On Merseyside, the A59 is partly blocked where a lorry is overturned on the roundabout at Switch Island off the M58 at Aintree, causing queues. In Lincolnshire, the A17 is closed westbound at Leadenham between Newark and Sleaford after a vehicle overturned. In London, the A10 remains closed along Kingsland High Street at the Dalston junction for an ongoing investigation. And on the M25 in Surrey, there are anti-clockwise queues from junction 7 for the M23 to 6 at Godstone after an accident earlier. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you can win a whopping £20,000 cash. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. You've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock. It's Friday the 31st of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Akweer, and Ben Leo. Now, Donald Trump is found guilty.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
So if you didn't guess, he reckons it was rigged, but in a historic moment, former President Donald Trump is found guilty on all 34 charges in his hush money trial. Nigel Farage spoke to Breakfast this morning.
I think the whole thing's a disgrace. It has been from start to finish. I have been concerned about the American judicial system for many, many years. You see, it's politicised in a way that ours isn't. You know, judges get elected on a ticket saying, I'm going to get Donald Trump.
Great British Energy. Labour pledged to get their clean power policy working within months of the election, and they claim they'll turn the page on the cost of living crisis. We'll hear from Keir Starmer live soon.
And fly tipping crackdown. The Conservatives pledged to dock points from the driving licences of fly tippers and fine them. Do you agree?
And a huge breakthrough in cancer care. Thousands of NHS patients will get personalised vaccines in what's being described as a landmark moment for cancer care.
A of course. Let us know what you think about all of the day's topics. gbnews.com/your say. Not least, we'll be going shortly, as Nana said, to Sir Keir Starmer in Glasgow, where he'll be unveiling Labour's Great British Energy Plan, a big drive to invest in wind, renewables, although no mention of nuclear.
Well, we'll see. It'll be interesting to hear whether that is part of the mix. But stay with us. This is Britain's Newsroom. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But first, let's get your latest news with Tatiana.
Nana, thank you very much. 10:02, the top stories from the GB Newsroom. Donald Trump was found guilty last night of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal in a historic turnaround from commander-in-chief to convicted criminal. No former or serving US president has ever been convicted of a crime before. Trump, who pleaded not guilty and denied all 34 counts against him, rejected the verdict and said the people would ultimately decide in November's election. Recent polls suggest a tight race against President Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have said they wouldn't vote for him if he were found guilty. US voters now face the question of re-electing an unpopular president or a convicted criminal. Speaking outside court, Trump dismissed the verdict as a disgrace.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution.
Trump still faces 3 other criminal charges, including 2 related to his alleged efforts to overturn his 2020 election defeat. The outcome could have further implications for his support, particularly in swing states.
I don't know what to say. I did not think that this was actually going to happen, and I can't believe it. It's about time he was held accountable for something. I can't believe it. It's amazing.
I feel very sad for America because this is the man who's fighting for America.
Trump's insurgent campaign has divided US politics and now poses the once unthinkable possibility of a convicted criminal occupying the White House. GB News US correspondent Stephen Eddington says many people still believe, though, his trial was politically motivated.
I think the point that the Republicans and Trump are making is that these were Democrat prosecutors and Democrat sort of politicians who are pursuing this prosecution, and the case seems very weak. If any other man was charged with the similar crime, I don't think this would have ever come to a court of law if his name wasn't Donald Trump. Certainly Alvin Bragg, who is the district attorney in New York, the Democrat prosecutor, he was campaigning openly saying he would convict or try and convict Donald Trump in his election campaign. So I think many see this as a political prosecution.
To other news now, Sir Keir Starmer will shortly be outlining his plans to clean up Britain's energy sector with a new publicly owned company that'll cut the cost of bills. Joined by Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, Sir Keir Starmer will unveil GB Energy, which will be based in Scotland with investments in wind and solar projects. Labour says it'll cut costs and relieve some of the UK's reliance on fossil fuels, but the Prime Minister dismissed it as a vanity project.
My view is that we have to prioritise this country's energy security. That's why we'll continue to support Britain's North Sea energy industry. That's not something that the Labour Party supports. They will ban further energy exploration there, even though independent experts all say that we do need that energy for decades to come. And on top of that, I'll make sure that we get to net zero in a more proportionate way that does not load up ordinary families with thousands of pounds worth of costs. So yes, we will get to net zero, but I will do it in a way that prioritises our country's energy security and household bills. All we've seen from the Labour Party today is a logo, and as experts have described their views and their ideas as, I think, incoherent, incredible and completely unachievable.
Meanwhile, Mark Logan has become the third Tory figure to defect to Labour in just over a month. He was elected as a Conservative MP in 2019, but he now says a Labour government will be better for his constituents and their pockets. It comes after the Conservatives lost two others to Labour in recent weeks, with both Dan Poulter and Natalie Elphicke crossing the floor. More than 600 homes in Surrey have been told not to drink their tap water after tests by Thames Water. The company says there's a possible deterioration in the quality of drinking water in some areas. Hundreds of households in the village of Bramley have been given precautionary instructions not to use their water supply for drinking, cooking or brushing their teeth. It comes after tests were carried out following a historical fuel leak from a petrol station, which has prompted complaints for locals since 2021. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who represents the constituency, says bottled water is being distributed to all those affected. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Nana and Ben.
Welcome back, 10:07 with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. I stand corrected, of course. We're going live to Sir Keir Starmer in Glasgow in just a second, where he'll be unveiling Labour's Great British Energy Plans, which do, of course, include nuclear. Their plans include projects at Hinkley and Sizewell and extending the lifetime of existing plants, including small modular reactors. Your emails have been flying in. Wendy, good morning. You say, I have little interest in America's politics when it comes to Donald Trump. We have enough crazy ones of our own, but I do believe it was a gross miscarriage of justice.
Well, Ken, on that subject, says when Trump is president again, he can just pardon himself, job done. I think perhaps on that one, I don't think he can, actually. I'll find out there.
I think he can do that.
No, I don't think he can.
He can pardon himself?
No, I don't think he can on these cases, on this particular issue.
Let's do some Googling and find out.
No, I don't think he can, though. I don't think he can.
And Valerie, good morning. You say both trials do have left the door wide open for appeals and applications for mistrials. And Spike, good morning. You say, so we have the Royal Navy protecting ships in the Middle East, but we cannot protect our borders on the English Channel.
Interesting, isn't it? Lots of those messages coming in as well. Some of them I can't read.
Why not?
Oh, yes, but Wendy's saying that's odd. We're going to reply to a comment and it's disappeared, those pesky gremlins again. We'll have to look into that to see if that's actually happening, because it was all right when I went through it. Let's see.
One from Eileen there.
Yes, Eileen says the Democrats may be wetting their knickers over the Trump verdict, but this has set a dangerous precedent. What goes around comes around, especially if Trump wins the election. Yeah, that would be interesting, isn't it? What will they do with Prince Harry as well? He's going to look into his visa. I don't think that's going to be successful.
And Ricky, good morning. You say, why is Nigel Farage so involved in US elections? We're in a mess here. I'm really fond of Farage, but his allegiance to Trump is mind-blowing. Well, his argument is that he reckons he'll have more influence on Britain as part of, potentially, a US administration, maybe being Donald Trump's ambassador or advisor or something like that.
Also the other night he did say that he, regretted that he's not going to be taking part in the elections in this country simply because the timing, it would have taken him. He was looking forward to having 6 months to formulate everything, but of course, Rishi Sunak called the election quite early. So anyway.
Yeah, torpedoed ahead of that. 6 months to 6 weeks. So there we go. So speaking of Trump, he's vowed to, quote, keep fighting after he was found guilty of all counts in his New York hush money trial yesterday. He
now faces possible jail time over his convictions for the covering up payments to an adult film star, Stormy Daniels, to buy her silence over an alleged affair. We're joined by US political commentator Laurie Laird. Laurie, talk me through how this has been received by the American people and what they feel about this.
It's certainly... It really was a bit of a surprise, even though it shouldn't have been a surprise, right? This was a jury that was picked from Manhattan. There are about 12 people who voted for Donald Trump in Manhattan. So the guilty verdict isn't hugely surprising, but it still is shocking in a certain way to see a former and potential future president being held guilty of 34 counts. Really is rather remarkable. I have to say, I was quite surprised when I saw it come through. Let's see what happens. I do think we may still be in an area where journalists, people in Washington, people in New York are concerned about this. I'm not sure once you get out of these urban centers, how concerned people will be about this.
Can I just ask, somebody sent a message, if he becomes the president, can he pardon himself? Now, I didn't think he could on these particular charges, but can he?
No, this one he cannot, because these are state charges. So he can pardon himself on any sort of federal charges. And of course, we have a number of other cases that are pending. Those probably won't go to court before the election. This one, he cannot pardon himself. However, there is an appeal process. I would be, while there is a maximum, the maximum sentence is jail time, I would be really very surprised whether he was given jail time. And I think that would look very political if he were.
And Laurie, how will this affect his MAGA base, his supporters? Because in the wake of the decision yesterday, the announcement that he'd been found guilty on all 34 charges, the donation site to his campaign, Donald Trump's presidential campaign, it crashed under overwhelming traffic. Is that a sign that his fans and his supporters don't care? And in actual fact, they'll use this as ammunition to keep ploughing on with their attempt to get him back into the White House?
Look, I think for Donald Trump supporters, this will be evidence that somehow this judicial system is rigged against their man. Donald Trump has spun it that way, and I think that has fallen to a certain extent on fertile ground. I think this is the big, whether there was a guilty or not guilty verdict, I think this is the big, the last thing. This is Donald Trump's legacy to a certain extent. I think that there will be a large section of the population that does not believe the judicial system works. I think that there is a significant minority of Americans who believe that Donald Trump was the rightful president in 2020. The election was in fact stolen, and that cohort can very easily believe that this was a political trial. This was rigged against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has played on that. He has said that Joe Biden is orchestrating all of this. Let's go back to what I said about this being a state issue. Joe Biden couldn't have done anything about this, again, because it's not a federal issue. But there are lots of Trump supporters that think that is in fact true, and that the judicial system has been rigged against their man. And I think there will be lasting damage to the confidence that Americans have in that institution.
Oh, well, you mentioned Joe Biden. Joe Biden and his laptop, nobody's really mentioning much about that. How has he got away with that? And I mean, even before that, there was Hillary Clinton as well. How was nobody investigating Joe Biden's laptop? Because I'm confused as to what he did.
Is this the Hunter Biden laptop?
Yeah, sorry, Hunter Biden's laptop. The laptop, yes, sorry, apologies.
Well, I mean, I think these things are slightly different because this was a laptop that was owned by Joe Biden's son, so not the president of the United States. Hunter Biden has pleaded guilty to a number of transgressions that were involved with the laptop, that were linked to the laptop, also to possessing firearms, to various other things. That sentencing has not happened yet. And again, I think Americans will have a doubt about the political process, but Hunter Biden did plead guilty, but he has not yet been sentenced.
But the point with that, Laurie, is...
In his garage there, wasn't it?
The point with Hunter Biden's laptop is that for a long, long time, I mean, there was 50 ex-intelligence officers from the United States, FBI, CIA agents, who all said that it was Russian disinformation. You had the mainstream media in the US refusing to report on it. You had Twitter at the time. Twitter at the time banned people for even sharing the New York Post link. I mean, that was just absurd. And then the argument is on the flip side. Yeah, go on.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I agree. You know, it's certainly the president's son and Donald Trump. These are slightly different things, but I agree with you. I think the media did go very, very softly on all of the details about that laptop, and certainly there was a reason to have some investigations. No doubt Hunter Biden did some very, very foolish things, but I don't think that there's evidence yet that was linked to his father.
All right. Laurie Led, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Yeah, but wasn't the laptop found in Joe Biden's garage or something, which is why there's a connection.
It was handed into a computer repair centre, I think, in Washington, and the repair guy delved into it and found all sorts of stuff, including text messages talking about 10% to the big guy, which is routinely thought to be about Joe Biden. It was to do with Hunter Biden, his son, his business deals with Ukrainian companies, Chinese companies. But the point is, as I was making to Laurie, at the time, people were banned off Twitter for even sharing the New York Post story revealing the laptop story. 50 ex-intelligence officers signed a letter and sent it to the Intelligence Committee in the Senate saying that it was Russian disinformation. It wasn't. It was a real story, and the efforts they made to bury it were concerning, to say the least.
Yeah, it does. You know, I suspect Trump is riding on that ticket in particular. But stay with us. It's just coming up to 17 minutes after 10 o'clock. Good morning. Still to come, thousands of NHS patients will get personalised cancer vaccines over the next year. It's been called a landmark moment for cancer care. Fascinating. We'll be discussing that next. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So the UK's most popular baby names have been revealed, with Noah and Olivia again topping the annual list. In at number 2 is Mohammed for boys. List is on the screen here. Number 3 for boys is George. Then it goes Olivia. Then it's Leo, Arthur, and so on. And for girls, so Olivia is number 1. Then Amelia, Isla, Ava, Lily, Ivy, Freya. There we go. Any of those names take your pick? Where's Dawn, by the way?
Well, yeah, there's on the Telegraph website, right, there's a really good way linked into this where you can actually put your name into the search engine, and these are names from 2022, by the way, and it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in. It's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not a full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring in this list. We are dying out. Our names will soon be gone forever, and I feel victimised by it.
Likewise, I should think we should start a campaign group and go on a protest march through London.
Cans, what do you make about Mohammed being number 2 for boys' names?
You know, I'm not going to comment on people. You know, they're going to call what they want to call. What I find interesting is people that do double barrel because they can't decide, and you know, a lot of people do that, and that's a bit difficult because I think you should just pick a name. You know.
I tell you names that are falling down the list though: Harry and Meghan.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's just gone 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Nana Aquia, and also Ben Leo. We're joined now by journalist and broadcaster Dawn Neeson and also former Labour MP Dennis McShane in the studio.
Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Right, should we start with the Labour Party? They're launching GB Energy. Who wants to go first with this? Dennis.
Yes, I think it's a very important development. I was very struck after the electricity crisis, remember when all our bills went up, they've not come down. Looking at the rest of Europe, different countries doing it in different ways, but all the time the energy companies were so organised, they protected consumers. The government would step in to protect consumers. We did nothing.
But energy prices never go down. When have they gone down, Dennis?
Well, they've...
literally, properly. It's often the barrels are going down, but yet the prices continue to rise.
No. I mean, I used to keep an eye on petrol pumps when I drove a lot. I don't drive now. My partner certainly does. And she said, "Oh, look at that price."
But the trajectory is always upwards.
No, it's come down as well. So in general terms, we are, odd enough, we're quite good in Scotland. We've got an awful lot of onshore wind farms, and they're community-owned, as well as being privately owned. And when you say community-owned, you still have to bring in all the private companies to make it work. In Britain, the Tories just handed over to local councils, doesn't matter whether they're Liberal, Conservative or Labour, NIMBY rules to block all wind farm installations. You drive across France, Germany, anywhere, Greece, anywhere, and the places are covered by wind farms and solar panels.
They are ghastly to look at, though, aren't they? I've got the Rampion wind farm off the coast of Sussex, where I live. They've ruined the view out to the English Channel.
Well, they used to say that about electricity pylons. I mean, they certainly said that about...
electricity pylons
said that about motorways. And in the 19th century, I mean, nobody wanted a railway anywhere near their land.
You're talking pylons are ghastly, though.
Any industrial installation, any airport, any way to get from A to B or deliver goods, yes, will have a visual offset. I mean, I certainly believe we should all get out hand carts and deliver our food from Aldi and Sainsbury's.
So how are they going to do this, GBNews?
What they're doing is that the British capital, if I can use that pompous, slightly sort of Diane Abbott word, has never been geared up to providing public services. They've always gone for easy, quick profit. Loads are owned partly by overseas hedge funds.
What are they going to do, though?
Well, they're going to put it... I'll get to the point.
Quickly.
They're going to put it under some communal control. So they'll have a responsibility to you and me and the public to deliver on behalf of...
OK, Dawn, let's bring you in.
The problem with this one, Dennis, is right. It's publicly owned company, receive $8.3 billion of funding from us, the taxpayers. Hello, good luck with that one out there. But it's also going to depend on private investment, the private investment from hedge funds, which are the sort of people that are investing in the water companies we have already, that are taking huge amounts of money out of them to support our pension funds, mostly. So this is a lot of hot air that doesn't actually say anything. And is this part of the £28 billion that Labour promised to invest in green pledges that they're flip-flopped on? No one's explaining how they're actually going to fund it. They say, oh, no, it's all fully costed. We know how we're paying for it, but I don't understand how it's going to work.
So it's a mix of private investment as well as public funds?
Well, they can't do it on their own. They can't do it just with our money, Nana, and it's our money, by the way. It's not the government, it's not public money, it's our money.
Dawn, hang on a second. It's being funded quite clearly by a levy on the private companies. So, yes, they will have to divvy
Which will bring in
6.5
million. This is costing 8.3 million. Even with Diane Abbott's maths, that's dodgy.
One right-wing accountancy firm has made that point.
Oh, right.
Daily Telegraph quotes, bless the Daily Telegraph.
Hold on, they're a right-wing accountancy firm. How do you work that out? They're accountants.
They're not accountants. They are consultants who are there serving the interests of the Conservative Party. Now, if you like, give me 2 weeks, I'll come back and I'll find another consultancy firm that will say, oh, no, this is all perfectly good funding. Because, I mean, the truth is, you're quite right, Dawn. It may not work very well. It may not work. I don't know, but I do know the present system is delivering incredibly high prices. Families I know in the richest part of the country, in SW1 where I live, who can't put on any heating, suffering from mould, which good heating will drive away. That is because the Conservatives have refused to take any responsibility for energy prices.
I don't think you can blame the Conservatives fully for energy prices. Oh, right, well, there's another story here, Dawn, about fly tipping.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I love this story. This is another good one, isn't it? This is our Yes, where is it? But this is in the iPaper today. It's a Tory announcement, this one. Persistent fly tippers will lose their driving licence and even face prison time under tougher new plans put forward by the Conservatives. This would be the Conservatives that have been in for 14 years and done absolutely not a lot about this problem. I mean, you know, Nana, like everything they're saying at the moment, I believe it when I see it. I mean, coming next week, we're going to tackle potholes. You've done nothing for 14 years. Why are you suddenly coming up with it now? In theory, it's great. Yeah, take the driving licences away of people who are found fly tipping. Fantastic. Yeah, everyone's going to vote for that. But why now? We all know why now. We're not stupid.
Dennis, why now?
Because there's an election on, and frankly, I find Rishi constantly pulling these little gimmicks, don't talk about national service, out of his bag. I agree with Dawn, who wouldn't like to see fly tippers punished, but the council, cleaning services, enforcement services have been cut to shreds by Tory cuts and Liberal Democrat cuts since 2010. Don't let them off the hook, please. And as a result, there is zero enforcement. No one has got any fear at all of going out with a big white van full of all sorts of industrial rubbish or even, you know, your old sofas and dumping them somewhere at 3 o'clock in the morning.
We can't even nick rapists and burglars at the moment, so fly tippers, I mean, yeah, come on, right.
All right.
It'll happen.
All right, so I want to come to this story, Dennis, about thousands of NHS patients will get personalised cancer vaccines. I mean, this is fascinating.
It's fascinating. It's very important. It's using the new mRNA-developed vaccine that was developed on the continent, and then we started using. It's different from the AstraZeneca one, which has now been dropped. But it doesn't matter. It's just because we've got the power of that NHS, which does cost a lot of money, 120, 130 billion pounds a year, to develop it, to roll it out over 30 centres. Yeah, I had a mini scare last year. Luckily, no problem at all. But, you know, when you get to any age, you're always a bit worried. You look at poor King Charles, poor Princess Kate. This will be so warmly welcomed. It's great that Britain's doing it. Britain's one of the leading countries, and God bless the NHS.
Fascinating technology, isn't it?
It's brilliant. It's being tried on one patient at the moment, 55-year-old lecturer who suffers from bowel cancer, you know, one of the most common cancers in this country and getting increasingly common. And 30 hospitals have actually signed up to the launch pad. It is still on trial, but, Nana, you know, any news about helping, you know, fight cancer has got to be good news.
I mean, Ben,
I think that the only problem I think a lot of people have with this is it's linked to the COVID vaccine, and a lot of people are still very dubious. It's not the COVID vaccine, by the way, it's not, but it's linked to that. It's using the same technology, and as we know, a lot of people are still very wary about what happened with that back in the day.
Well, you know, with this technology, maybe that's the one good thing that came out of that, that all the countries got together, came up with their version, and we've come up with this technology that can actually be applied to other things like cancer, which I'd probably say was a good use for it. Ben's not saying
and the thing is, we don't... Yeah, she's talking to you, Ben. Keep awake.
I'll behave myself. Like, it's, you know, if you want to take mRNA vaccines, up to you.
But this is different. It's based on a similar technology. It is different, and I just think, again, Nana, the devil here in the detail. We don't know how much it's going to cost.
Well, look, it's got to be cheaper than treating millions of people with cancer.
Absolutely, stage 4 cancer,
If you can get rid of that, and not just the cost, but to people, not just the financial cost, but to lives.
I had my 5th COVID jab the other week.
Oh, my God, not
blimey.
Did the other 4 not work?
No, they did. I never got COVID.
You're turning into Ben.
I never got COVID, and I'm unvaccinated.
Well, you're young.
I never wore a mask. I travelled the world during COVID. I was in packed nightclubs. I never got vaccinated. I never got COVID.
Yeah, but some people did, and some people died from it. That's the point.
Well, you're a young Superman. I'm an old geezer. So I just think, you know, this Queen Victoria. Everybody said smallpox. We're going to inject you with something that's developed from a cow. And Queen Victoria rolled up her sleeves, had it, and the world changed. And I actually think we should just grow up about science, personally. But no offence.
You should grow up, Ben, no offence.
Grow up. Well, tell that to all the people who've been vaccine injured and killed from COVID vaccines.
Yeah, but then you've got to talk about the people who also survived as well. Look, it was a risk.
Who were also always very sick.
But I don't
anyway.
I think if you get injured from a vaccine, I think the government should be compensating you here.
Of course, but the problem was people who arguably didn't need the vaccine, young people of my age, very fit and healthy people who statistically, by the government's own data, weren't going to be affected by COVID, were bounced into getting vaccines they didn't need. So
Well,
that's the
talking
issue.
about
They still have personal choice, though, Dad.
They didn't have personal choice because people were calling for the unvaccinated to be barred from events, from pubs, from travelling the world, losing their jobs in the case of the NHS. So people, Nana, didn't have a choice. Let's be honest.
Yes, talking of bouncing, can we talk about inflatable penises?
Sorry, go on.
Yes, thank you. You've
Yes,
just come back
please.
from holiday. You know about this sort of thing.
What are you talking about? What's that?
Come on.
This is a
Give me
wonderful
tone.
story. I spotted it, but Dawn,
right.
I said, Dawn, it's about inflatable
I've nicked
penises.
it. Tabloid journals
for
is
you.
your job.
And steal it, but Dennis got in.
Shush. A popular resort on Spain's Costa Brava has banned inflatable penis costumes and sex dolls from stag and hen celebrations, with fines up to €1,500. This is because so many Brits flood there in the summer for hen and stag do and use some of the more interesting... what's the word I'm looking for?
Inflatable.
Accessories to celebrate that a new bylaw has been introduced to stop us having fun with an inflatable penis.
Well, they seem to not want Brits to have any fun down in Spain, the Canaries, the Balearics, because I read a story yesterday about Mallorca, authorities there being concerned and worried that tourism was way down. So
What's so fun about an inflatable penis?
Well, it's just a bit of a laugh, isn't it? I mean, I don't think it's very funny, but if you've got a drunk hen or stag do, I mean, I'm sure they'd...
I think it's lovely.
Dennis, inflatable penises? Where do you stand on them?
I'm past the age where I discuss that kind of thing. I just love the idea of all the little English willies arriving on the Costa del Sol and bingo, they go out late at night and drink and suddenly they're the biggest men in town. Whether the women will enjoy it at the end of the evening, I'm not sure, but...
Won't be seeing you down the Ibiza Strip this summer then, Dennis.
Apologies if anyone's just having their breakfast this morning. Right. Well, listen, Dennis, Dawn, stay with us. Joining us now is Greg Svensson. He's the chair of Republicans Overseas to talk about Donald Trump. Greg, welcome. Really good to talk to you.
Great to see you.
So Donald Trump, he's going to appeal, obviously.
Of course,
what are his chances in an appeal?
I think they're very good. There's so many holes in this case. I can't imagine that it wouldn't be overturned on appeal, Nana.
Oh, you still there, Greg? Or have you gone?
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Oh, you are?
I'm here.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell us about what happened with his fundraising in the hours after that decision. Apparently, the website crashed.
Yeah, it's amazing. We don't have the numbers yet because the website crashed, but this is not a surprise. And, you know, you recall last summer after the mugshot went out, he raised $7 million overnight. I imagine he'll raise a lot more from this. And I think that, you know, even people that were undecided or independent are seeing this as a real weaponization of the justice system. There's so many holes in this case. I think it'll be overturned on appeal. But in the meantime, you know, you could have you have the sentencing amazingly set for 4 days before the Republican National Convention. I don't think that was a mistake. So, yeah, there's a lot of fundraising going on and a lot of chatter about, you know, how this might even help President Trump.
It is interesting, though, because it doesn't really put the American judicial system in a very good light. Because it does look like it's been weaponized, so the party's weaponizing the justice system. Is that the general take that the public are seeing? And would that be the reason why so many people are moving over to Trump?
Yeah, I think so, Nana. And look, the Democrats probably love this. You know, they'll campaign on it. They'll say he's a convicted felon. You can't vote for him. So, you know, there is definitely a partisan angle to this. But generally speaking, it's really working to the president's for the president at this point. And people see through this trial and even the indictment going back to, you know, March of 23, that this is really a politicized case. And you saw that with the judge, Juan Marchand. You saw how he instructed the jury. It was basically impossible to be acquitted with a judge that's that hostile. I don't blame the jury because the jury was instructed by this judge. And of course, you had Alvin Bragg, Soros-backed DA, who's famous for reducing felonies to misdemeanors in New York for violent felons, and yet elevated this particular misdemeanor to a felony because it's Donald Trump.
Greg, just explain for the viewers over here in the UK who don't know the sort of pedantics of the US justice system. The prosecutor in this case, Alvin Bragg, you mentioned him, the district attorney, they are politicised, aren't they? He's a Democrat. Just explain how that works. Also, judges are elected on political tickets as well.
Right. Yeah. So both the prosecutor and the judge are Democrats. Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor, campaigned with Soros money, by the way. He campaigned as his chief campaign slogan was, "I'm going to get Trump." So you saw a real politicization of this process even before the indictment, even when, Alvin Bragg was running for office. Now, he considered the case and then decided not to proceed, similar to other jurisdictions as well as federal agencies like the Federal Election Commission looked at this and said there's no violation of election law here. And yet, with pressure from the White House, with pressure from the Democrats, Alvin Bragg changed his mind and proceeded with the indictment. Juan Marchand is really conflicted. He's the judge in this case. He's an elected Democrat. It's a very Democratic town, so that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. But I think he's really tied into the party. He's made campaign donations to Democrats just to state his case, just to be on the page, not significant contributions, but just enough to be noticed. And then, of course, his daughter is a progressive activist on the left and raises money for Democratic candidates. So between the Soros money and the real conflicted nature of the judge, this was a case that was almost impossible to beat.
And Greg, just briefly, what do you make of Megyn Kelly's comments overnight where she said that because of the way the political justice system, the way that the justice system in America has been politicised like this and weaponised to pursue what she says are, political agendas, Trump, if and when he'll make the White House, will just do the same now. The floodgates have been unleashed.
You're exactly right. The Rubicon has been crossed, and I think that there will be some retribution from the Republicans. I'm not sure I advocate that. I don't really like to say that, or I don't want to see that, but it might be the only thing that helps fix this flawed justice system that we have. So Megyn Kelly's right, and she's a great example of someone who's not a fan of Trump, and now she's going to vote for him. And so regardless of your opinion on President Trump, I supported Ron DeSantis in the primaries. But, look, I think it's really encouraged people to get involved, to go out and vote. Not everyone's going to vote for President Trump. If you don't like him, don't vote for him. But many of us have been really, worried about this weaponization of the justice system. And it really has to be changed.
Greg Sensen, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you both.
Right, well, still with us, journalist and broadcaster Dawn Neeson, and also former Labour MP Dennis McShane. Dawn Neeson, your thoughts on all of this Trump business?
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I love American politics at the moment because they actually make ours look sane, and that's a blessed relief, to be honest with you. It was a foregone conclusion, I think, that Trump would be found guilty. The fact that it was actually such a unanimous verdict was interesting. But the thing is, will it affect him? I mean, some 36% of independent, undecided voters in March said that a guilty verdict would make them less likely to support Trump.
We're just going to, sorry to interrupt, we're going to cross live to Sir Keir Starmer in Glasgow now, talking about GB Energy.
Lorna, can I say thank you? That was fantastic. What a story. What you've done, that's a story that should be told right across Scotland, inspiring so many young people. And not only the story, but for you to walk from there up onto this stage and deliver it in front of all these people and the cameras. That is what inspiration is all about. And I can tell you, with our plans for infrastructure, we've got a lot of work coming your way as a welder. Thank you, Anas, and all the other speakers. Anas, thank you for your friendship and your leadership here in Scotland, along with Jackie and with Ian, because together we have transformed and changed the Labour Party and put it back in the service of working people. So thank you, Anas. And it's great to be back here in Scotland. It's sunny. And I seem to be here every other week. And that's not just because of the tandoori salmon in Mr. Singh's in Glasgow, which is getting quite a reputation. But it is fantastic to be here and to be with all of you to launch these first steps because, look, the wait is over. The Prime Minister has called a general election. We've waited a long time for this. Scotland has waited a long time for this. A chance for an election, a chance to change. So So if you're a family that have been struggling with the cost of living day after day, week after week, month after month, if you're a business that's been struggling now for a number of years against the odds, if you're in service to your country or your community, then this election is for you. Because by the power of our democracy, the beauty, if you like, of our democracy, the power shifts to you. Your chance, your vote, your chance to vote for change, for yourself, your future, your community, and for Scotland. And I say to this, make sure you use your vote, your voice, not to send a message. The SNP say they want you to vote to send a message. Send a message to go and sit on the opposition benches protesting. I don't want you to vote to send a message. I want you to vote to send a government. A Labour government with Scotland at its heart. So this is the chance for change, to end the chaos and division, to turn the page and to rebuild Scotland and rebuild Britain. Because we have to stop the chaos. In Westminster, we've had 14 years now, 14 years of chaos and division. In Scotland, 17 years of spinning round in circles, going round and round in circles, getting nowhere. In Westminster, 5 prime ministers in a row. Here in Scotland, 3 first ministers in 3 years. That's failure, that's not delivering, that is not good for Scotland. And there's a cost. There's a human cost. There's always a human cost of chaos and division and spinning around, getting nowhere. And Anas and I went to a community centre, not that far from here. And we were at an event, we finished the event, and then I was doing a short piece to camera using an auto cue. So I went to the edge of the centre, set it up, and did my piece to camera. There was a 7-year-old girl there. She'd been with us during the event. She was very, very sparkly, huge personality. Quite incredible. And as I was doing my piece to camera, I saw her come over and watch what I was doing, really intrigued. What is this? This camera rolling, some words. And so when I finished, I said to her, well, do you want to have a go? Do you want to see what it's like? And the words she said to me will stick with me forever. She said, I don't read, me. I don't read, me. I carried those words all the way home with me. That went right through me because that is the cost that she is paying for the failure here in Scotland under the SNP. And they're not going to change. The Tories won't change in Westminster. The SNP won't change here. It'll be more chaos, more division, more sleaze, more scandal, and they'll feel more entitled if they get more at this election. So we have to stop the chaos. We have to draw a line. But here's the good news. You don't have to put up with it anymore. You can choose change. But don't take anything for granted. If you want change, you have to choose change and vote for change. And make sure that we boot the Tories out and end the chaos. Because change is on the ballot on the 4th of July. Make no mistake, there are 2 futures, 2 paths that we could take. Down one path, the future is more chaos, more division, more of the same. Down the other path, hope and unity, a chance to take Scotland forward, to take Britain forward. Now, Anas and I, Jackie, Ian, Angela, Ed, the whole party has changed the Labour Party. Service of working people. And what we ask now at this election, humbly, is the opportunity to change Scotland and to change Britain and put them back in the service of working people. Now, I know that in the past, some people here in Scotland who wanted the Tories out didn't vote Labour because they didn't think that we could win. But we've changed Labour. We now have that opportunity, and you have to vote for it. Because there's no change without Scotland. There's no Labour without Scotland. And I believe that the solidarity of working people is not just our identity, it is our argument. The single greatest force, probably the only force, that can bring our four nations together. And that's why Scotland is at the heart of our mission. And Anas and I have worked side by side to deliver across Scotland. We've got huge ambition for Scotland. But like all ambition, it has to start with first steps. First steps that we've set out this morning. As you'd expect, ruthlessly well prepared, fully costed, fully funded and ready to go. Step one, economic stability. The foundation of growth, the only way to keep taxes, inflation and mortgages low. Because if we learnt one thing, it's that if you lose control of the economy, it's working people who pay the price. Liz Truss lost control of the economy. And in Scotland, everybody with a mortgage is paying the price month by month by month. The average increase, £120 in Scotland per month. People desperately worried about whether they can afford it, what they can't do as a result, even thinking of having to sell their house and downsize. How do you think they feel when Rishi Sunak says, we've turned a corner, everything's fine? How do you think they feel when they see those that advise Liz Truss in the House of Lords swanning around because Rishi Sunak was too weak to block them? They are paying the price. And we visited a food bank, Anas and I, not so long ago. And this was in Glasgow. A real shock. People going to pick up their food because they couldn't afford for themselves to put food on their own table. Shocking in its own right. Shocking particularly when we saw people coming from work, having finished work, to pick up a food parcel. That is the price that they are paying. There's always a cost to chaos and division, and that's why stability is our first step. Step two, to help cut NHS waiting times in Scotland. Now, it is impossible to overstate how many people are on waiting lists and the impact it has on them. It's now 1 in 6 in Scotland. I was here last year saying it was 1 in 7. It's now 1 in 6. That means almost everybody watching or listening this is probably either on a waiting list themselves or know someone who is. That's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And what we can achieve together is 160,000 extra appointments every year here in Scotland. What a difference that would make. And we would pay for it by cracking down on tax avoidance and getting rid of the non-dom tax status. Step three, make work pay with the New Deal for working people. As Angela says, the greatest levelling up of workers' rights in a generation. And what does that mean? 0 hours contracts banned, fire and rehire ended, a genuine living wage. Because I believe that everybody is entitled to dignity and respect at work. That is a bare minimum. But I also know that dignity and respect at work are essential for economic growth. Step three. Step four, Great British Energy, that publicly owned company owned by the taxpayer, making money for the taxpayer, harnessing clean power. Do you remember what the Tories said 10 years ago? Cut the green crap, stop the investment, stop insulating our house, made us more exposed to what was going on in the world. And as a result, your bills higher. I want to be clear, we're not turning off the taps for oil and gas. That'll be come, but the transition is coming. We can't stick our head in the sand. And as Ed said, renewables are cheaper. There's a massive prize here, lower bills, security, the next generation of jobs. So clean power is the best opportunity we've had in a generation for the next generation of jobs. Now, other countries are in the race. Look across Europe. Look to America. And Rishi Sunak's in the changing room. I want to be in the race, and I want to win the race. Why not Scotland? I went to Aberdeen, and there's a glimpse of the future there. Because what I saw and talked through with the energy sector there and the workers there was the pipelines they were going to use for carbon capture, the skills they would use for the next generation of jobs. And I asked them, how long would these jobs last for? And they said decades upon decades upon decades. Jobs for the next generation here in Scotland. And Scotland can and Scotland will lead the clean energy revolution. And that's why Great British Energy, which will cut those bills, which will give us that security and those jobs, will be headquarters right here in Scotland. Step 5, maximising Scotland's influence on the world stage. I'll give you an example of that. Scotland has the second largest offshore wind capacity in the world. Second largest. Yet 3 times as many jobs are in Denmark. That's shocking. I went to Whiteley's wind farm. Some people have heard this story, but it really sticks with me. This is just outside of Glasgow. There's, I don't know, 200, 300 wind turbines there. Really huge bits of engineering and skill and design. And I went up and they were turning around, generating energy. Had 2 problems. One, we didn't have a battery big enough to store the energy, so they were turning them off because of a lack of planning. Second, I asked a question. I said, how many of these incredible pieces of kit, this incredible manufacturing engineering, how many of them were built in Scotland? None. Not one. They were towed in from other countries. Not a single one was built here. We have to end that. We can change that. Floating offshore wind is the next generation. We can get ahead. Not only have floating offshore wind, but build it here in Scotland with manufacturing jobs, engineering, building on the skills that we have here. Promoting Scotland business abroad, boost exports, and attract investment needed for jobs here, good jobs, in Scotland. Step 6, jobs and opportunities for young people. Training people for the future, for the jobs and the work and the lives they're actually going to live. Make sure that young people can get the apprenticeships they need, whether in welding or anything else. Support first-time buyers and work with ANAS and Scottish jobs in clean energy. So this election is the chance. It's the chance for change, the chance for renewal, the chance for Scotland and Britain to go forward. A new generation of Scots on Labour government benches, working with me for Scotland and delivering for Scotland. And I believe Scotland can lead the way, lead the change, stop the chaos, turn the page, rebuild. Now make sure you take that chance. Make sure you vote Labour. Thank you. Thank you.
That was Sir Keir Starmer in the west of Scotland unveiling Great British Energy. He came out with 6 steps, again, seems to be the magic number: economic stability, help cut waiting list times, make work pay, Great British Energy, which we were all waiting to hear, maximising Scotland's influence on the world stage, and jobs and opportunities for young people. Well, listening to that was journalist and broadcaster Don Newsroom and former Labour MP Dennis McShane, and they're still with us. I will come to you, Dennis, first, because you're a Labour man. What did you make of it?
If it all works, I think it can. It's very, very welcome. Why have we not heard any language like that from any of our last 3 PMs?
What particularly excited you? What language that got you going there?
Well, particularly the idea of making energy a priority and bringing the companies together under an overarching national plan. So not just as private companies owned overseas with no responsibility to the British state or British people. That was important. Certainly the idea of making work pay, because we have got a lot of people in work, but a lot of them depend on social benefits to make ends meet, and we still have massive food poverty in households. That's going to be a very big challenge, I think, and one that will shock some people, because if we have a country based on low pay, we'll never have a country based on a decent life.
Dawn Neeson. Well, I was waiting for the energy announcement. I didn't actually hear it. All I heard was he said change several times. He said working people, working families several times. And so many questions. I mean, you know, Labour wants to be carbon neutral in 6 years by 2030, 5 years before the Conservatives. We currently get 30% of our energy from non-carbon friendly, excuse me, oil and coal and gas and things like that. So in 6 years, right, 30% more energy has to be produced by the wind farms that Keir Starmer is going to build all around the coast of the country, by the sounds of it. No idea how he's going to do that or fund that, by the way. And what about the people of Scotland who work in the North Sea, our oil and gas industry? Are they suddenly going to be building these wind farms? I just want the detail now, and I'm not hearing any. I'm hearing change, I'm hearing working families, I'm hearing all the positive things that Dennis mentioned, but I just don't know how any of it's going to be done.
Well, he told the story about the 7-year-old.
Several times.
Windfall.
Several times.
Farm again.
Several times. But I thought he was really patronising with that as well. He said, well done, little girl. How wonderful. When he was handing over, he was talking to someone in the audience. And, well done. That was wonderful. And it's like, oh, go away.
Dennis, wasn't it Labour and the Lib Dems back in the day who, especially under the Lib Dem-Tory coalition, who were lacklustre on the building of new nuclear power plants?
The Lib Dems in particular, the Greens in particular. I lived for 15 years in France, and France took a historic decision in the 1970s to go pretty much full-on nuclear. So they cut the dependence on oil and gas that we have lived by in the last 30 or 40 years. I hope, and it will be a question of bottle, that Sir Keir does face down all of our NIMBYs. I mean, we're the most NIMBYest country in Europe. Look at America, where they frack everywhere. Here, a tiny bit of drilling, and all the Tory councils of Lancashire go insane with fury and anger. That I don't know why. I mean, we just have got to get back, I think, to putting the national interest first.
Would you support fracking?
I'd support fracking, yes.
Well, we're not going to frack or build wind farms in his back garden in Islington, are we?
It's actually Kentish Town.
Similar.
It's a very... No, I had a place up there. It's a very small garden, actually.
Well, but the point of this NIMBYism is, though, that sometimes it's easier for people to say these things when they're nowhere near it. And, Keir Starmer probably won't have fracking in his backyard.
I think it's quite difficult in NW5 to sort of do a lot of fracking.
Precisely.
That's the point.
But the point is that we've dug up coal, and people probably objected to that. We laid railway roads, people objected to railway tracks, people objected to that. We're going to have to crack this. I mean, the obsession, the hate of local councils, mainly Tory, but also Liberal and Labour, I'm really not doing a party thing on this, against building the homes for our grandchildren is obscene. I've always lived in a house probably that was built in the 1950s one way or the other, and then Britain built for its future generations, me as a young man and so on, and then a parent. Now it's come to a dead stop because of this Redder will hate the NIMBYs, the collective. I don't know whether it's the right thing or
not really hate for the NIMBYs, is it? It's just that people who live in certain areas will have this almost infection of wind farms and pylons.
No, I'm
sorry. A lot of people
I'm sorry.
I don't blame them.
I was on the train.
Well, listen, sorry, well, let's quickly get back to Keir Starmer in West Scotland, where Christopher Hope's about to ask a question.
And on your green announcement today, what if the wind stops blowing? Will the lights turn off?
Chris, on the... obviously, first and foremost, we respect the court's decision in relation to the decision in the Trump case. There's sentencing still to go and possible appeals, but we, respect the court process. In the end, it is for the American people to decide who they want to elect as their president. And if we're privileged enough to come into government, we will work with whoever is elected president. That's what you would expect. We have a special relationship with the US that transcends whoever the president is. But it is an unprecedented situation. There's no doubt about that. And there's a long way yet to go, I think, in relation to what happens next. Thank you, Chris. And on the question of wind, look, it's always going to be a mix of renewables for the future. Solar, offshore wind, nuclear, hydrogen, they're all part of the mix. But the important thing is this, oil and gas is running out. It isn't going to last forever. We can't ignore that. The transition to renewables is where the sector is. If you go to Aberdeen and talk to the sector, they are talking about the investment they need to put in renewables. It's cheaper. It gives us energy security, because oil and gas is sold onto the international market. We don't control the price, and hence, proof of that, if you needed it, was when Ukraine was invaded, our prices went up. If we had control of our prices, that wouldn't have happened. So, lower bills, energy security, and the jobs of the future. That's why other countries are in this race. That's why the Americans are in this race. I don't want us to sit this race out and then in 10 or 20 years regret it when all the jobs and the energy production is elsewhere and we haven't done it for ourselves. We have incredible resources, incredible sort of natural resources as well as skills. We need to take advantage of that. We need to be in the race to win the race. Why not Scotland would be what I would say. Thank you, Chris.
OK, question there from our political editor, Christopher Hope, who is at the press conference in Glasgow. He asked two questions. The first was about Donald Trump's hush money trial. Well, he was found guilty, wasn't he, on 34 charges of paying a stripper, Stormy Daniels. So Keir Starmer, Dennis, said that it would be up for... It was a very diplomatic answer when asked how he'd deal with Donald Trump, which is in stark contrast to previous comments from Labour types, including David Lammy, who previously called Donald Trump a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath.
Yes, I've read that. And I've seen some quotes by David Cameron. You should read David Cameron's autobiography. I mean, he does a dump on Trump, just as bad as that. I'm sorry, when you think a guy's out of power, you get very tough and angry with them. And then the moment the man or woman's going to take over a head of state...
10 seconds, your response to that?
He was being diplomatic.
Yeah. OK, good stuff. All right, Tatiana Sanchez is on standby with your news headlines. Back in a sec.
Ben, thank you. The top stories this morning. Sir Keir Starmer has outlined what he's called a clean energy revolution, starting with a new publicly owned company that'll cut the cost of bills. Unveiling Labour's plan to cut household energy bills, the Labour leader said the new GBNews would also speed up the transition to clean power. Urging his supporters to vote for change, Sir Keir said that while Liz Truss had lost control of the economy, Labour's plans could be trusted.
As you'd expect, ruthlessly well prepared, fully costed, fully funded and ready to go. Step one, economic stability. The foundation of growth. The only way to keep taxes, inflation and mortgages low. Because if we learned one thing, it's that if you lose control of the economy, it's working people who pay the price. Liz Truss lost control of the economy. And in Scotland, everybody with a mortgage is paying the price month by month by month.
In the US, Donald Trump was found guilty last night of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal in a historic turnaround from commander-in-chief to convicted criminal. No former or serving US president has ever been convicted of a crime before. Trump, who pleaded not guilty and denied all 34 counts against him, rejected the verdict and said the people would ultimately decide in November's election. Recent polls suggest a tight race against President Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have said they wouldn't vote for him if he were found guilty. US voters now face the question of re-electing an unpopular president or a convicted criminal. Speaking outside court, Trump dismissed the verdict as a disgrace.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution.
Trump's insurgent campaign has divided US politics and now poses the once unthinkable possibility of a convicted criminal occupying the White House. GB News correspondent Stephen Eddington says many people still believe his trial was politically motivated.
I think the point that the Republicans and Trump are making is that these were Democrat prosecutors and Democrat sort of politicians who are pursuing this prosecution, and the case seems very weak. If any other man was charged with the similar crime, I don't think this would have ever come to a court of law if his name wasn't Donald Trump. Certainly Alvin Bragg, who is the district attorney in New York, the Democrat prosecutor, he was campaigning openly saying he would convict or try and convict Donald Trump in his election campaign. So I think many see this as a political prosecution.
In other news, more than 600 homes in Surrey have been told not to drink their tap water after tests by Thames Water. The company says there's a possible deterioration in the quality of drinking water in some areas. Hundreds of households in the village of Bramley have been given precautionary instructions not to use their water supply for drinking, cooking or brushing their teeth. It comes after tests were carried out following a historical fuel leak from a petrol station, which has prompted complaints for locals since 2021. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, who represents the constituency, says bottled water is being distributed to all of those affected. Now, thousands of NHS cancer patients in England are expected to get access to trials of a new type of treatment using vaccines to fight their disease. A man suffering from bowel cancer has become the first person in England to be treated by the NHS with a personalised jab. Elliot, who's 55, has already undergone surgery and chemotherapy. He received the pioneering new jab at Birmingham's Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Health leaders say the treatment is a landmark moment for patients and the NHS. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Ben and Anna.
Hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Akwe and Ben Leo.
Very good morning to you. Lots of emails flying in. One from Debs about Keir Starmer's speech in Glasgow. She says, mortgage rates have gone up all over the globe. Iceland have interest rates of 9.25%. Debs, you're responding to Keir Starmer's claims that Liz Truss increased the mortgage prices of Scots, basically.
Yeah.
A good point. I mean, as you rightly pointed out, in America, mortgage rates were massively high all around the world. So that particular comment can't be pinned just on Liz Truss.
Also, John Gillam, now this one is interesting. He says, so Starmer is going to give us protection from Putin by creating British Energy, then put the head office in Scotland, who, if they become independent, will certainly hold us all to ransom.
Yeah.
That's quite a good point you make.
Good point.
Yeah.
Dickie, you say oil and gas are likely to be necessary for years, even beyond 2075. Toyota, the car maker, have turned back towards combustion engines with cleaner fuels. Why? Because we can't guarantee the wind will blow or the sun will shine.
And I'm just going to quickly read this one from Brendan. He says, so according to cat.org, we need somewhere in the region of 15,000 wind turbines. This is from 2023. Now, to place this many wind turbines, you would need an area that's twice the size of Wales. So can you ask the Labour MP, where the hell are we going to build houses?
Thank you for all your comments. Keep them coming in and we will endeavour to get them read out. Now, the big story of the day is that Donald Trump has vowed to keep fighting after he was found guilty of all counts in his New York hush money trial.
He now faces possible jail time over his convictions for covering up payments to the adult film star Stormy Daniels to buy her silence over an alleged affair. Now, he's set to be sentenced in just over a week's time.
He left the courtroom, well, frankly, quite furious. Here's what he had to say. And, by the way, count how many times he says the word rigged.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration.
OK, our home security editor, Mark White, joins us now. Mark, just explain to viewers at home who aren't all clued up about American politics why Donald Trump thinks it was rigged.
Well, he believes it was rigged because you've got multiple cases that have been brought against the former president, another 4 criminal cases that still await trial, and he believes that Biden is behind that. He's, of course, railed against what he sees as a Democratic attorney general who is a prosecutor who's in in Manhattan, also the judge, of course, a Democrat. It is a politicised legal system that they have in the States. So that's why he is pointing the finger right back at the White House there. And all this is going to do, I think, at the end of the day, is just polarise even more deeply the two camps here, with the base, Trump's base, galvanised, I think, to campaign even harder for him. We've heard, for instance, that the donation website crashed because of all of the extra funds that people were pledging for Donald Trump in his campaign. And those that are against Trump, well, it will just reaffirm what they've always thought about Trump in the first place. But I think the most interesting aspect, and we are in uncharted territory here, what the most interesting aspect will be just where we are with these swing voters, that some of them who had said they were probably minded to vote for Donald Trump, but in some polling that's taken place in recent weeks, there was a suggestion that if he became a convicted felon, that those that might be minded to vote for him might change their mind.
But the options, you know, aren't that great, are they? They've either got Joe Biden, who doesn't appear to look like he's coming or going, or they've got Donald Trump, who, if he is convicted, will be a convicted felon, I suppose. Out of those two, do you really see Joe Biden having a chance of winning? Seriously?
Well, it's too close to call. Frank Luntz, who is a well-known and respected pollster, was saying just this morning, if you'd asked me a day ago before these verdicts were in, he would have probably just called it in Trump's favour. But now he says he just can't call it. He doesn't know how it's going to play out. And, of course, regardless of, you know, the chances of Trump getting in to the White House or not, there's the issue of if he gets in and becomes the 47th president of the United States, he's going to be in office with this case still hanging over him, because it's going to go to appeal, there's no doubt about that, and that won't be resolved before he gets into office if he wins the election, and the other cases as well. He's going to be a bitter, angry man in office having to deal with a world which is in a very perilous state at the moment, with the war raging in Ukraine, with the Middle East going through turmoil as well, with what's happening in Gaza, with strikes, of course, just in Yemen by the US and Britain overnight. And, of course, an increasingly belligerent China, not to mention North Korea, all of the above. it's, you know,
under Joe Biden's watch, really.
Sorry?
Well, a lot of this under Joe Biden's watch as well. It's all sort of exploded since.
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
But, you know, Trump taking office, if he does, with all of the judicial ramifications, all of that hanging over him, is going to be a distraction, to say the very least.
All right. Thank you, Mark. We're joined now by Professor David Dunn from the University of Birmingham, a professor in international politics. Good morning to you. There's this theory that Mark also just mentioned off the back of polling that undecided voters who may have been considering voting for Donald Trump are now probably going to be put off by the fact he's a convicted felon. I just can't buy that. Is that true?
Well, we don't know. And that question was asked back in April, and the question was a hypothetical one about whether he was convicted of any felony. And of course, at that point, it looked likely that there would be 4 separate criminal cases, the 3 other ones being more serious than this one. So this one is the least serious of the 4. And given he's convicted of this one rather than the other 3, it may well be the case that that impact is less for this case than it would have been for any of the other ones. But we don't know what the impact will be, and we'll have to wait and see. And of course, another aspect of that is that what we don't know is how Donald Trump will respond to this. He seems to be very angry, and if you look at some of the rallies that he's been doing, he's becoming increasingly rampant in the things he's saying, talking about deporting 15 million illegal aliens, putting up a 10% tariff on all imports into the United States. This can make him even more rampant in the things he says because he is angry. For example, one of the things he's talking about doing is purging what he calls the deep state. Well, perhaps if he was elected, he would plan to gut the Justice Department. And comments like that may actually alienate undecided voters, and therefore the impact of this conviction may be that actually he says things that put people off rather than actually people reacting to the conviction itself.
But I mean, he ran his 2016 campaign on draining the swamp, and he, of course, won. I just personally can't believe that anyone would be put off by comments such as, you know, dismantling the Justice Department or even the fact that he's now been convicted. I think if you were going to vote for Trump, any of this new stuff kind of, you know, is here nor there, personally, but that's just my take.
Yeah, look, I think the American people appear to be opening their eyes and seeing this as an unfair treatment of a politician. And I think they are also seeing the justice system being weaponised. So far, all of this has done nothing but actually give Trump more support. I know what you're saying, but do you not think that rather than people turning away from him, as his website crashed earlier, people are actually turning towards him, and in fact, he's going to divide them further, and he's actually going to be better off against Joe Biden now after this?
Well, I think you're right, it will divide people further, but I completely disagree with you when you say that this will push more people towards him and see it as a politicised justice system. The justice system in New York is an independent judiciary. A democracy works on by having separation of powers, and the rule of law has been applied. We've had 5 weeks of testimony, and the case, if you listen to it, was fairly compelling, actually, against him. And the 12 jurors deliberated for 12 hours. Clearly, they started that process not in unanimity, otherwise it wouldn't have taken them 12 hours. And they eventually convinced the waverers that actually he was guilty on 34 counts.
Got it.
And yeah, so... Yeah,
David, let me just address something you said there. You said that the judiciary in Manhattan, New York, is completely independent. I mean, that's not entirely true, because the DA, Alvin Bragg, is a Democrat who said that it would be his mission to nail Donald Trump. He's now done it. So, I mean, how's that independent?
Well, because the way in which the American justice system works is that you are elected on your party affiliation so that you approach it. If they want more conservative or more liberal representatives, they vote on that basis. But being a member of a political party does not mean that you can't administer the law and even-handed.
I mean, could you imagine that here? Could you imagine if we had Labour or Tory CPS prosecutors? I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, again, how is that independent?
He's already stated his case before the case has even gone to trial, so that's not really very independent, is it? I mean, it's indefensible.
Well, actually, Well, actually, the way in which the magistrates' courts works is that when you apply to become a magistrate, you indicate your political affiliation in order that the bench has a representative sample of people from each political party, and they're allocated on the basis of the share of the last election. So there is an equivalence here of the way in which balance is sought. And again, if you have a democratic state like New York is, you actually elect democratic prosecutors. And that means that actually the legal system reflects the views of the population. And that's why they do that. It doesn't mean that there is no justice. The idea that Trump is some sort of victim belies the facts.
No one's suggesting that, but I was just addressing your particular point by saying it was independent. I mean, we've already gone over it, but some would argue how can it be when they're politically affiliated? But Professor David Dunn from the University of Birmingham, thank you for joining us this morning. Much appreciated.
Yeah, not only politically affiliated, but making comments like that as well.
Well, in the other case where he was forced to pay $300 million to another accuser, accused him of sexual assault and rape, the DA, I think it was from New York, also went on Twitter boasting and celebrating the fact that they'd fined him, or he'd been made to pay, rather, so much money.
But didn't that come down, though? Because it was like something like 80 million or something, and it wasn't that in the end.
Whatever the figure was, my point is that you've got... could you imagine CPS prosecutors going on Twitter, speaking publicly about how they want to nail people?
It's even gone to
yeah,
trial.
that's the point.
Yeah, well, listen, stay with us. Up next, a parliamentary candidate has... has had excrement posted through this door. Here's their door. We're discussing that. Constant threats to our politicians. Is that acceptable? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
The Princess of Wales has said she's excited by a new report on prioritising early childhood, a cause, as we know, that she's closely associated with.
Yes, the task force findings claim that the UK could reap £45.5 billion in economic benefits if firms prioritise early childhood.
Well, let's talk about this now with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Good morning, Cameron.
Good morning.
I suppose it's characteristically Catherine, isn't it, to say she doesn't want to distract from this report by sort of people talking about her health. But we should start probably by saying she said she's not feeling well enough to come and talk about this in public, but sort of saying she's watching it, keeping a close eye from behind closed doors.
Yeah, absolutely. This should not be seen as a return to work by the Princess of Wales, but I have been told she's A, read the report and B, been briefed on it. But this all stems really from her work when she started being a working member of the royal family, where she was working closely with people suffering from addiction, mental health problems. And what she found is all of these issues tend to stem from a poor start in life, so the first 5 years of a child's life. So in January 2023, she set up Shaping Us, this awareness campaign for the early years. 2 months later, she convened the Business Task Force, so 8 members of big businesses across the UK, and over a generation, that could add, as they claim, more than £40 billion to the UK economy each year. We spoke to Peter Grigg yesterday. He's the chair of Home Starts UK, a charity which supports young families. Let's hear what he said about the Princess's role in this.
She's been a real driving force behind the report and everything it's done. And when we've spent time with the Royal Foundation, what it does, it reminds everyone that this is really important work and early childhood matters, that more businesses should get involved, that more charities are out there for people who want to do more to support families and children. So it's been a wonderful experience.
The People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. 11:24. You're with Ben and Nana on Britain's Newsroom on GB News, and we're also joined again by journalist and broadcaster Dawn Neeson and former Labour MP Dennis McShane. Welcome back to you both. In the Telegraph today, Dawn, Richard Tice has slapped down Nigel Farage over his hint at a possible election pact with the Tories. Richard said there were no deals to be done with the Conservatives after Nigel suggested he could be willing to come to an agreement.
Nigel actually said he was open to a conversation. And to be fair to Nigel, I think being open to a conversation in politics is always a good thing. I mean, what's that old adage about keeping your enemies closer than your friends? And I think being able to have conversations with people you may regard as your enemies is a good thing, not the least, because you learn things. So, but you know what? I just want a political party, any political party, to be united, just for once. You know, we've had Labour with sort of like our with Angela backing our Diane Abbott and Keir Starmer. We've had the Tories who are fighting like rats in a sack, and now even Reform are doing the same thing. And it's like, is there anyone united on anything, Dennis?
I thought Nigel was going off to help a convicted felon in America with his election campaign. No, I can say that now.
You can, no,
12 good men and true made the decision. I've been listening to all of these debates, and nobody said we're now abolishing trial by jury in the United States, if you listen to some of the people from the right arguing. I find it fascinating. Nigel's problem is, I love him, I like him personally. He's very kind to me when I got into some trouble. He is a huge personality. He was on Question Time last night.
Oh, yes.
He's not young anymore, but he's never, ever been supported by British voters in the ballot box to become an MP.
OK, well, he has. He's become, well, not an MP. He's won election as an MEP multiple times. UKIP in 2015 won 4.3 million votes. They were the second party, sort of third party. They won 2 seats.
But tell you about European Parliament elections.
Can I just quickly say, it's only because of the way the electoral system is structured that he has become an MP. But he's done more than any MP.
Nigel for sure backs the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. He wants a fully PR system, just like the Israelis have got, and some of the...
Well, most of Europe has a PR system.
Yes, and look at the politics they're now producing. We're not getting into PR debates...
Look at our politics. Are you saying ours are something to be sort of...
I think actually it'll be very interesting. In a month, I assume we'll have, for the first time in 10 years, a reasonably stable government with a good majority. Now, you may not like its policies.
You don't know
it may not last long, but I assume it. But what I now find is that Reform, Richard Tice, Ben Habib are dumping on Nigel Farage. I love it. Let's have more of it.
Nigel was on Peston's show last night. He clarified the comments. He said that the only deal he'd ever do with the Conservative Party is if they agreed to stand down candidates in some seats, so Reform would win those seats, which he said would never happen. He said it's never going to happen.
Why make a suggestion that would never happen? That's
no. We all make suggestions that would never happen. So I think we need to be careful here, because we're into murky waters with some of our politicians.
Nigel is, I think, slightly, he's had a fantastic 20-year run. He's certainly transformed British politics. He's made anti-Europeanism legit and helped win a referendum. I don't deny that for 1 second. But whenever he's put himself up to the British people to be made a lawmaker, they said, no, thanks, Nigel.
I think I think that's quite disingenuous, because he actually has become more consequential than many MPs. So Brexit, let's talk about real political movements that have actually happened. Let's talk about... Sorry, I'm speaking. We're talking about debanking, yes? He got out there and he made changes just from his own personal experience. So whether he is an MP or whether he is representing a party, Nigel Farage has made some incredible moves. And it is a political system that has not enabled these people to get...
If I may just make a tiny point, Nigel, you, Dawn, others are really big personalities who shift some of the political debates. I accept that. All I'm saying is he's never, ever been validated by the British people in a parliamentary vote to become one of our lawmakers. They love him as a big personality.
That's because of the electoral system. It is really, as you said.
Well, let's bring in Dawn. Nigel has suggested...
Please don't. I enjoy listening.
He suggested he'd have more sway over Britain as part, potentially, of a Trump administration, as opposed to, trying to stand as a lowly... Well, not a lowly MP. I very much respect MPs, but as an MP over here. Did you see the point in that?
He probably will have. Depends, obviously, on what happens with Trump going forward. And we know that the sentencing is going to happen in July, whether Trump will go to jail. Everyone very much doubts it, given his age and given what he's actually been charged with. And it doesn't look good for American politics, does it? So, I mean, I actually felt quite disappointed when Nigel Farage said he was going over to America rather than standing or doing something political in the country that he professes to love very much. So I felt like I was a bit disappointed then. But I think he might have a point. I think he can be more influential there. I mean, I think, you know, our politics at the moment is a bit of a basket case. I honestly don't know how all this is going to come out in the wash in the next 5 weeks. It's not 5 weeks I'm looking forward to. So I think, you know, Nigel might have a point, but I will. The one thing I will agree with you, I think he's been one of the most influential political influences in this country for a long, long time. Regardless of whether you like him or whether you vote for him, nothing to do with that. He has changed the face of British politics.
Well, he also said that he does regret not standing, but the reason why was simply that he did not have the time and he needed at least 6 months to gather the campaign. So there was that as well.
Well, there was that conspiracy theory about, you know, I don't believe it, but have the Tories announced his campaign so fast because it didn't give the likes of Nigel Farage to get his acting together.
All right, well, Dawn, Lisa and Dennis McShane, thank you very much. Let's get your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nana, thank you and good morning. The top stories. Sir Keir Starmer has outlined what he's called the clean energy revolution, starting with a new publicly owned company. Unveiling Labour's plans to cut energy bills, the Labour leader said the new GBNews would also speed up the transition to clean power. Urging his supporters to vote for change, Sir Keir said that while Liz Truss had lost control of the economy, Labour's plans could be trusted.
As you'd expect, ruthlessly well prepared, fully costed, fully funded and ready to go. Step one, economic stability. The foundation of growth. The only way to keep taxes, inflation and mortgages low. Because if we learned one thing, it's that if you lose control of the economy, it's working people who pay the price. Liz Truss lost control of the economy. And in Scotland, everybody with a mortgage is paying the price month by month by month.
In the US, Donald Trump was found guilty last night of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal in a historic turnaround from commander-in-chief to convicted criminal. Trump, who pleaded not guilty and denied all 34 counts against him, rejected the verdict and said the people would ultimately decide in November's election. Recent polls suggest a tight race against President Biden, though around 13% of Trump's supporters have said they wouldn't vote for him if he were found guilty. And a man suffering from bowel cancer has become the first person in England to be treated by the NHS with a new personalised vaccine jab. Elliot, who's 55, has already undergone surgery and chemotherapy. He received the pioneering new vaccine treatment at Birmingham's Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Health leaders say it's a landmark moment for patients and the NHS. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2726 and €1.1732. The price of gold is £1,841.47 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,251 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
It's a bombshell day in global politics, so who best to cover it all than Tom and Emily? Good afternoon, Britain. Coming up, what's in store, guys?
Not Ben and Nana. Tom and Emily, who better? Yes, it is us. Of course we will be. Of course we will be covering Donald Trump. What happens next? His lawyers say he's going to appeal this judgment. He's speaking at 4 o'clock. What will he say at Trump Tower? I guess I want to see all the different steps that will happen now. Could he be the first president in jail.
But we'll be a little bit closer to home as well, because Keir Starmer is in Scotland today, announcing his new big green energy policy. How does he get to Scotland? He flew there by private jet.
No.
No.
Make of that what you will. Make of that what you will.
That's hilarious.
And have you seen this this shocking footage from Mallorca? Absolutely outrageous. These stag do Brits, essentially, you know, fighting broad daylight on the beach. We're going to be debating whether badly behaved Brits should just have their passports taken away. They need a time-out. There's also been another guy on an EasyJet flight, arrives in Spain, is dragged off by the police because he's been drunk and disorderly and tried to open one of the doors mid-flight.
Oh, God.
What is wrong with us?
I thought planes opened their doors automatically mid-flight these days. At least Alaska Airlines seem to. But no, clearly he's trying to do that himself.
So yes, I mean it's shocking behaviour. I mean Brits abroad. I mean obviously they're useful.
Well, there's that other story doing the rounds about how Mallorca has banned apparently penis-shaped inflatables off the beaches because of rowdy Brits. But yeah, there we go.
No sense of fun.
No sense of fun.
Great.
Right. No sense of whimsy.
Look forward to it. That's coming up at 12 o'clock. More to come with us, but we'll be back in just a tick after the break. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Stick with us.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Washington Post estimates that $50 billion was pledged by giant corporate donors over the last few years. Mega funders like George Soros, who dropped $220 million into fancy non-profits, and a lot of ordinary people sent in small donations. So where did all this money go? I mean, small organisations were raising insane amounts of money just through QR codes, sticking them up on posters and on the internet, on social media, and getting huge amounts of money. Where did it go? Well, we can see that, you know, quite a lot of it got spent on fun stuff for the organisers. So, I mean, Patrice Cullors, the founder of Black Lives Matter, was, we know that she bought, or Black Lives Matter on her behalf bought this luxury villa that, you know, and she's like, oh, we're going to use it for, you know, community workshops or whatever. Yeah, that, and living in, and also her brother's business got paid, you know, nearly $1 million.
Security.
And her baby daddy got paid nearly $1 million to provide creative consultancy services.
I'm thinking about, as you said at the top here, finally journalists are looking into this, and it's ridiculous that this amount of money hasn't really been explored, because when they did say, hey, what have you done with this money, of course what she said was basically, you're being massively racist, how dare you?
You're racist, look over there.
Yeah, essentially. And then some people were, oh, OK, yeah, sorry, we didn't mean to question you. So the figures that have been raised are astounding. And, yeah, as some of the stuff is just mental, like, and multi-million-pound homes, dollar homes.
But it's good, so the money got spent on having fun instead of, like, it would have just been, like, annoying community projects to create more racism.
Yeah. What they're really not ready for, the media,
lives.
they're still calling it the killing of George Floyd. Many people think he died of an OD. That's the next level they're not ready for.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's fast approaching 39 minutes after 11 o'clock. If you just tuned in, this is Britain's Newsroom with me, Nana Akwe and Ben Leo. Now, it's the Champions League final on Saturday night. Real Madrid are facing Borussia Dortmund. Is that right?
Yes,
right?
perfect.
And to mark it, there's a festival in Trafalgar Square.
So we're going to cross over now to legendary England footballer and Premier League legend Joe Cole, who is there. Good morning, Joe. Thanks for joining us. Champions League final tomorrow night. All eyes on, I guess, Jude Bellingham, Real Madrid, the England star, who is, I call him Madrid's best player. It's going to be his first Champions League final. Is this an opportunity for England supporters and, to really get behind our man, the England star?
Oh, we can't hear him. We've got no...
We have Jadon Sancho as well on the opposite team as well. So we've got two Englishmen in this final that are fantastic young players. But with Jude, I think with a habit, when we have someone coming through very, very special, everyone wants to ask questions and they want to put pressure on him. If I was managing Jude, I'd just be trying to take as much pressure off him. Just go and play the game. It's a team game. There's 23 other players in the squad. He is very special, but we just need to just let the lad breathe, let him play his football, and I think you'll get the best out of him if we do that.
And what's going on in Trafalgar Square, Joe? Explain what the event is tomorrow night.
Can't hear him.
What's going on in Trafalgar Square tomorrow night? What event are you at? OK.
That's a shame. Well, we'll get Joe back in just a moment. But interesting that, Jude Bellingham. Jude, that's the patron saint of lost causes, isn't it?
It is, and it's also the name of my child, which you knew.
I didn't know.
My child is not a lost cause,
no,
I'll tell you that.
Sure he is.
So tomorrow night, I believe Joe is promoting he's an ambassador for an event in Trafalgar Square, central London, where Sadiq Khan is holding a screening. So he's hailed London as the sporting capital of the world. And it's going to be shown on a big screen, I believe, in Trafalgar Square. So Real Madrid against Borussia Dortmund, the Champions League final, big European game. As I mentioned to Joe Cole there, English interest comes in the form of Jude Bellingham, who's, I think he's about 20 years old, but he's a very wise and old, head on young shoulders, a complete superstar, a Galactico. He's flying the flag for England in that Madrid side, and Jadon Sancho for Borussia Dortmund as well. So it's going to be a big day for both of those English lads, and of course ahead of the Euros this summer as well for England.
Just suppose not a young head on old shoulders. It's difficult to get around. Sorry, that's not funny. Well, lots of you have been getting in touch with all your thoughts. Keep them coming. gbnews.com/your say. Lots of comments on, of course, we've been talking a lot about Donald Trump and the fact that he's now, well, he's a convicted felon now.
He's a felon.
Yeah.
That's what the Democrats wanted. That's what they will probably run now between now and the election. All these big rallies from Joe Biden, whoever else, they'll call him a felon, and maybe they'll even repeat the chant that he had for Hillary Clinton in 2016, saying "lock him up, lock him up."
But we spoke to Paul Dudred. Paul Dudred thinks that he'll win the appeal, so we will be following that with bated breath. Stay tuned. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hello, very good day to you. Here's your latest GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. There is a bit of cloud and some rain and some blustery winds in parts of the east of England. Otherwise, it's a largely fine picture as we go through the last day of meteorological spring because we have high pressure building towards the west of us. That being said, I did mention some clouds, some outbreaks of rain. They will continue as we head into the afternoon, perhaps turning a little bit heavy, possibly the odd rumble of thunder across the far southeast of England, but it is gradually clearing away. Elsewhere, and there's a good deal of fine sunny weather, especially across northern and western parts, and in any sunshine it should feel pleasantly warm, temperatures just about getting into the low 20s, but feeling a bit fresher towards the southeast because of the thicker cloud and a bit more of a breeze here. There will be a bit of a breeze everywhere, but like I said, not feeling too bad in any sunshine. Some drizzly outbreaks of rain likely across the far north of Scotland as we head through towards the end of the afternoon and into the evening. Further south, though, across more central southern parts of Scotland, a dry picture here, some bright sunny spells, and it's a similar story across Northern Ireland, much of northern western England and also Wales. In the east, though, we're sticking with the largely cloudy skies as we head towards this evening, though most of that rain should have cleared away by this time. As we go overnight, still some cloud lingering across the far east of England and a bit more cloud across the far north of Scotland, bringing a few outbreaks of rain, but elsewhere, particularly towards more western parts, because of that high pressure to the west of us, it is going to be dry with some clear skies, and as a result, we could see temperatures dropping quite widely into low single figures away from any towns and cities in particular. Watch out for a few pockets of mist and fog. As we go through Saturday then, a mostly fine picture for many of us. Still a bit more cloud perhaps towards some eastern parts. A little bit of drizzly rain can't be ruled out, but I am expecting any of that to clear away and a brighter picture across eastern England as we go through the afternoon. Elsewhere, the best of the sunshine towards the north and west. We couldn't rule out 1 or 2 showers and temperatures getting into the low 20s.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
11:45. Ben and Nana with you this Friday on Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Thank you, of course, for your never-ending comments and emails. gbnews.com/your say on all of today's stories. The big one, of course, being Donald Trump's conviction. We had Sir Keir Starmer with his Labour announcement in Glasgow about British energy, a big plan for decarbonisation of the UK by 2030.
Well, Tina London said that if they up the windfall tax on these companies, meaning the energy companies, that will filter down to the consumer like it always does. So we will be hit in the pocket again. I think she's been sarcastic there because the prices never come down, do they? That's simple business economics, Keir. More costs, higher pricing. That's what her thoughts are.
And the very funny. OK, we're going to go to Christopher Hope. He's in Scotland.
Yep.
Yes, with the Scottish Labour leader. So Labour, of course, this morning, as I mentioned, have launched their big green energy plan. Chopper, what's going on?
Morning, yeah. You're joining me in Glasgow here with Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader. You're here unveiling your Great British Energy Plan. How much will it save families?
Look, we have got two parts of this plan. One is the immediate, which is partly using the windfall tax to drive down people's bills, but also the medium to longer term, which is GB Energy, a publicly owned energy generation company that will be headquartered here in Scotland, helping to make those strategic investments in onshore wind, offshore wind, tidal, solar, hydrogen, as well as carbon capture and storage, which we believe can bring down people's bills permanently. Alongside that, of course, the economic stability that's required to drive down inflation and bring down the cost of people's mortgages. And another part of that plan, which is our Make Work Pay New Deal for working people, which is to drive up wages across the country. Collectively, we believe we can increase people's incomes and bring down their bills by hundreds of pounds.
Well, how much though? Because sometimes you say £400 and sometimes £300 by 2030. Which one?
Well, look, I'm sure Rachel Reeves, who we are really trusting and putting our...
Your policy?
Absolutely putting our confidence in to deliver that economic stability. Of course, you'll know, depending on how much you save will also depend on how Ofgem sets those rates, and we hope we can continue to see that being driven down, as well as people's consumption coming down by insulating people's homes, as well as creating more of that clean energy to drive up the generation so we're not reliant on those foreign imports coming from despotic regimes like Russia. So we think this can be a package alongside the New Deal for working people, alongside driving down inflation, that can help working families.
And you want more onshore wind farms, do you?
Look, I think that has to be part of the mix, of course. Of course, that has to be done in collaboration with local communities. I think right now there's probably some frustration from some local communities who look at these wind farms going up and think, actually, how's it benefiting my bill when my bill is still skyrocketing? I'm not receiving any financial benefit from this, but it's on my doorstep. And part of what we're looking at with GB Energy is how you get greater community ownership of those assets so we can drive down local people's bills, those are contributing into the energy grid, as well as helping them create those jobs for the future. I think that is a big part of what we're looking at around GB Energy.
They're quite noisy. Would you live next door to one?
Why not? I think they look beautiful. I think they are fantastic.
But living next door to an Anasawa.
I think they're. Why not? I think they're driving down people's bills. I think if they can create more jobs, then why not? I think that's a good thing. And I promise we haven't named it after the news channel in terms of GB Energy, although I'm sure there's a connection.
And just quickly, Keir Starmer flew here by private jet to a green announcement. Is that hypocrisy? He attacks Rishi Sunak for the same thing?
Well, of course, he's going to offset his carbon emissions, as you would expect him to do. But in this 5-week election campaign, we can't afford to waste any minute in trying to get right around the country, trying to persuade people to vote Labour in this election. And Keir wants to be and will be a Prime Minister for every part of the country. That means he has to get round every part of the country as much as he can over the next 5 weeks. We're delighted to have him here in Scotland. He's here almost every other week, which is great because it's demonstrating that he understands Scotland, cares about Scotland, wants to deliver for Scotland, and is working with us to persuade Scottish people to vote Labour in this election.
And just finally, so Keir Starmer won't say that your colleague Diane Abbott should be an MP or a candidate for MP at the next election. You say she will. Angela Rayner says you will. 6 union bosses say she will. Is Keir Starmer showing weak leadership here?
I think what he's doing is following due process. So there has been a disciplinary process that's now concluded. Diane has the whip back. He said there is no decision to bar Diane Abbott, but it's for the NEC to make the decision on who our candidates are. And of course, there's no decision from the NEC yet. On my part, I have agreed with Angela Rayner to say that Diane is a trailblazer in the Labour Party, someone with a proud history of delivery, both for our party and her local community, and someone who made history by being elected as the first black women MP, which is of course making history in itself. So we're focused on what's really on offer here, which is the choice and the change, and let's deliver that change by getting rid of this rotten Tory government and by voting Scottish Labour in this election on the 4th of July.
Anna Sowell, thank you for joining us at GB News today in Scotland.
Pleasure.
Great to see you here. And that's Anna Sowell, the Scottish Labour leader, with some support there for Diane Abbott. We'll hear more on her future next week.
Thanks, Christopher. Interesting answer about flying to Scotland on a private jet. He says that he'll offset it by planting some trees or something. Interesting. Do as I say, not as I do. Let's go to the Sun's former royal correspondent, top scoop getter Charlie Ray, who's going to be talking about the fact Princess Kate, the Princess of Wales, will not attend the rehearsal for Trooping the Colour next week as she continues her chemotherapy treatment. Good morning, Charles. This is to be expected, isn't it? And also, by the way, why is everyone so obsessed with when we're going to see Catherine again? Can't we just leave her alone to recover in peace?
Well, I think we have left her alone to recover in peace. I mean, there's an awful lot of traffic going on in social media. But, I mean, clearly, the fact that she's not going to be at the rehearsal for Trooping the Colour, it is a bit of a blow. And I think that the problem is, people expect to see her. We've had deadlines, if you like, about, she's going to be back at such and such a day. She was going to be back for Trooping the Colour. And clearly she is listening, quite rightly, to the doctor's advice as to when she thinks or when they think that she can go back into public duties. There is still some suggestion that she might appear at the actual Trooping the Colour from the balcony the week after next. We'll have to wait and see. But, there's an awful lot of speculation as to when this poor woman's going to come back to work. Is it going to be the autumn? Is it going to be next year? It just goes to show, I mean, like anybody who's suffering from cancer, this is not an easy journey. And we've got to give her the time as we have to give other people the time.
How is King Charles coping? Because he seems to be doing all his royal engagements now. Do we have an update on his health?
Yes, I mean, well, we haven't actually got any more update than we have. He's back at work. He's going to be at Trooping the Colour. He's going to be reviewing the troops, not from horseback as he normally does, but from a state carriage, which has been specially adapted. I'm not sure exactly what part of it's been specially adapted, but that's what they're telling us. It's been specially adapted so he can carry out the review. So it's nice to see him back in action. And like Catherine, he has been working behind the scenes as well, as has Catherine with her a scheme to improve child benefits at work, for working parents. So she's not just sitting there, with her feet up watching daytime TV, much as you guys would like to see.
Yeah, OK. Charles, thank you so much for the insight. Appreciate it. And, of course, we extend our wishes to Catherine and the King as they both recover from their health ailments. One very quick announcement, quite a funny development, actually. Ian Dale, the LBC presenter who stood down from his show this week to try and stand as a candidate as a Tory MP in Tunbridge Wells, has now been dumped from the selection process because people have unearthed a podcast where he said that he never liked the place, Tunbridge Wells, and would happily live somewhere else. So all breaking in the last half an hour. I'm sure Tom and Emily on Good Morning Britain in just a tick will be covering that. But yeah, Ian Dale, who left his LBC radio show to stand as a Tory candidate in Tunbridge Wells in Kent, Sussex, is no longer standing.
I'm sure they'll have him back. Well, listen, that's it from here in Britain's newsroom. Up next, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Tom and Emily.
Goodness me, a busy day of news today. Keir Starmer has jetted off to Scotland in a private jet to announce a new carbon zero policy, his Great British Energy policy. He says he offset the jet trip, though.
And we're hearing disturbing news from Germany. A knife attacker has been shot by police after going on a stabbing spree at an anti-Islam rally in a German city of Mannheim. We'll bring you the very latest on that shocking breaking